Hello, hello, friends. So we are back with our usual crew. It is Coach Christina, Coach Phil, and Coach Jess. And then today we have a special friend joining us. We have Miss Samantha Bartley, IFBB Pro. But the thing relevant today is she's like a travel aficionado. She's a flight attendant, always on the go. And we're talking about travel choices and hitting your goals and sticking to plans. And so who better to help us understand everything that's possible in this situation than somebody who obviously busts her ass to get shit done, but is always on the go as well. So welcome, Samantha. How are you doing?
Good. Welcome to my hotel room here in Orlando.
Right, she's
Oh, you,
literally on the go right now on a layover.
yeah, you're just down I-4 from me right now. That's crazy.
Oh yeah. Yeah, no. I'm all the way across the country. I live in Seattle, Washington.
How often are you on like overnights away from home?
So typically I work like fly 4 days a week. So I do 2-day trips. So I fly out somewhere, layover, and fly back the next day. So I'm usually doing about 2 layovers a week.
Wow, that is crazy. I'm terrified of flying. I'm the worst. And like I never used to be, but it's weird. As I've had more kids, I've gotten more afraid of flying, which is
I
so
love how Phil and I were like, oh,
No, because I might be worse with flight anxiety than anyone else.
Oh, I promise you.
Oh,
I promise you. I've had strangers hold my hands and like I like flying to Florida. We literally drove there for our recent trip with all of the kids because I was like, after we went to the experience, what was it, 2021? There was a storm where our plane was the last one to leave. They were like, oh yeah, they've grounded everyone else because it's not safe, but they said we could go. And I was like, why are we going? You can't. Can you please let me off the plane? Like the doors were shut, and I was like, "This is a bad idea. You shouldn't do this. Just let me off the plane." It was miserable. I wound up holding the hand of a woman from Boulder for that trip, and she was very nice. And now I've learned that approximately 4 margaritas or Bloody Marys is a great way for me to sit quietly. And then
my
I just have
God,
to
I would
pretend
be
I'm
terrified
not
of
drunk.
puking.
my
I was the
husband
other
and I flew my husband and I flew out of Vegas this last Sunday, and it was horribly turbulent leaving. I was sleeping, passed out. Everybody's like white knuckling the armrest, and I was out.
yeah.
I'm
No,
not
no.
gonna lie. Like not to be super creepy, but whenever there's turbulence and I'm on the plane, I'm like, Sam does this all the time. I'm fine. Like I actually think about you and I'm like, no, she's a trooper. Like this is probably nothing. It's fine. And I haven't had bad turbulence experiences, I guess,
Mhm.
but I'm also not a super nervous flyer. I just get really like sick if I'm in a small plane and it like does like the circles and the turning.
Mhm.
I just don't look. But if there's turbulence, I'm like, it's fine. Sam would be like fine through this. So I'm okay.
We always
I,
warn, we always tell the nervous flyers, if you don't see us freaking out, there's nothing to freak out about. If
yeah.
See,
we're going, if we're gonna, if the pilots have told us to take our jump seat or we're walking quickly to our jump seats, that means you should probably buckle in. We're trying to be safe too. So
so
as long
I've
as
been
we're
on a
not,
flight where the airbags dropped down because it was like,
no.
yeah, yeah, same flight. There was just a really nasty lightning storm, and the turbulence was like all over the place. And at one point, the pilot was like, "Hey, we're just experiencing some weather," and then like communication system just totally cut out, and you just feel the whole plane just going like that. All the masks drop down in the plane. I have been a nervous flyer ever since. That was like my second flight. And coming back from our honeymoon, we were on this like island hopper for the Bahamas. And this thing was from probably like the 70s, or maybe if I say 80s, I mean like 1981 as like a ceiling. But like as we're on this plane, the overhead luggage compartment wouldn't actually latch, and it fell down like 2 minutes into the flight and got me in the side of the head, left a nasty gash. So I'm like, I don't like planes. I don't like flying. But what I have heard that's kind of helped me with some of my flight anxiety, And I don't know, you can tell me if this is fact or crap, or the kids say cap or no cap, which I don't understand what's supposed to be what. But supposedly you want the pilot to predict a little bit of turbulence, because otherwise they're bad about like autopilot and they're like reading a magazine, reading a book, not paying attention to anything, versus like, oh, there might be some turbulence. They've got to actually pay attention.
I'm not up in the flight deck, but no, our pilots, I work for Alaska Airlines and our pilots are amazing. So yeah. I don't know what airline you were on where it dropped.
That doesn't sound like Alaska Airlines.
That was Spirit, which I know all their planes apparently come from the graveyard. So yeah.
Well, you know what else helps you get through a flight? Eating a proper meal.
Snacks.
Which might help us like go into today's topic. I don't know, that was a reach. That was a stretch.
I like it. Well, I was going to say, so if we back things up before we even get to the airport, because I know I get clients asking a lot about like, what can they take with them? What's going to make it through security, what's not, and like things like that. And the funniest one is always people think their protein powder is going to get nabbed as like a brick of cocaine or something. And like I can see it to a certain extent, but like the drug dogs are, you know, we got to give them more credit. They're not going to flag your protein powder as being something bad, but that's something I always recommend. And so before we started, Sam showed us her giant lunchbox like bag situation that she's got. Is that one of those like 6-pack bags? I used to have one of those a million years ago.
It's for flight. Well, it's like advertised for flight crew. It's called a strong bag, and it's nice and thick insulation. So like I have a fridge here in my hotel room because I do 2-day trips. I don't even take my food out of my bag because sometimes the hotel fridges will be too cold and all your stuff will freeze, or they'll shut off in the middle of the night and all your stuff goes bad. So I just leave all my stuff in my cooler.
So what is like some of the non-negotiables that you pretty much always have in your bag for you when you go on a 2-day trip like this?
I always have my Hot Logic, and I know we're on a podcast, but there is going to be YouTube. So if you're on the YouTube, you can't see it. I do have my Hot Logic. So this is how I heat up my food. It's just like a hot plate and it's insulated. It's kind of like, I call it like a soft-sided crock pot. So it's a slow cook. So I usually put my stuff in there. Like if I think of it in advance, I'll put my food in there like an hour to an hour and a half before I plan on eating. And my food is nice and hot, ready to go. You can plug it in at the airport in one of the little, plug-ins, or here in the hotel room. I'll do it if I remember, if I have time. I always travel with a set of utensils. I always travel with salt and pepper. I do carry a little food scale with me if I do need to measure anything out, but because I meal prep everything is measured out. But if I do,
what I like is like you're anticipating that, like, oh, if something happens, I'm prepared.
Yeah. And then I actually travel with this collapsible tea kettle.
Oh, cool.
Because, yeah.
Oh,
yeah. So in the morning, I like to have my coffee and my oatmeal. And I did my dishes, so they're in the bathroom, but I actually bring an actual bowl and a mug with me on every trip, because when you're living out of a hotel for multiple days a week for years on end, it's nice to have some little creature comforts that feel like home. So I bring my own coffee mug and my own bowl, and I make my coffee and my oatmeal in the morning. And I bring my coffee from home, my instant coffee, and my own creamer. So yeah. And then I always carry my big gallon jug with me.
So you basically take the Boy Scouts mantra of always be prepared. That in short is how you stay so just dialed in, laser focused. I love it.
Yep. I keep all of my vitamins like ready to go. I have I bring a weight scale with me because if I'm in prep or I just stay on track 365. So I have a weight scale that I bring with me. Yeah, no, everything. I literally have no excuse. I carry a little medicine bag with Benadryl or ibuprofen or anything that I might need while I'm in if I become ill on a layover, or if any crew members need anything, or I mean, I even carry a little toiletry bag in my work purse that, I have extra tampons, I have extra ibuprofen and stuff like that for if a passenger needs something. So no, there's no excuse.
I think the fact of the matter is, like, people might hear what you do, which is you prep all of your food, and you're like pretty clear, like you talk about it on your story or you like post about it on your Instagram, like you prep all of your food. It's always prepared. You're rarely eating out unless it's curry.
Yes. Oh, yellow curry.
Right. Okay. But you prep everything, and people might think that this is like quote unquote extreme, but you travel for your job. And so this just allows you to hit protocol and not have excuses. Like you said, like it's not extreme if this is your life. So even people who like work shift work, right? But if you travel a lot for your job, or you have shift work, or you're just like, you have one of those jobs where it's kind of, let's say, out of the ordinary, like out of the 9 to 5, I don't think that this is extreme at all. I think that this is realistic when you have health and fitness goals, right?
Yeah.
Like, let's say like Joe Blow. But like, if you just like whatever want to live your life, but I mean, you're probably also just needing to get to work, and you have to take care of people, and you're moving, and you're like moving, like walking through the airport, and you have a very busy schedule. I mean, it makes sense for you to actually prep everything, and then you're not stressed about it, or you're not like wandering through the airport going, oh shit, well, this is closed, or like this isn't going to work for me, or oh, I could have that, but like it doesn't make me feel good. Like it's just,
you're not having to rely on like, okay, what's the chef at the airport restaurant really doing for portion sizes, and how much oil and butter are they cooking with? Because I'll always tell my clients, ideally we want to be dialed in and lasered like you are, right? Where we've got stuff prepped, we've taken it through TSA, which, by the way, anyone listening to this that's in the US, if you don't have TSA pre-check, even if you fly once a year, get it. It is worth every single dime to just,
you know what? I can't get it.
No,
just because I live in the US doesn't mean I can get it.
And it's like impossible to get it now. Have you seen our friend had to fly to a different state across the country on a 3-month wait list to go get his appointment? It's crazy, like trying to get it anymore.
Oh, wow. We literally did ours, and like the next available appointment was like 1 week out.
My husband just signed up for it, and he got an appointment within a week.
Oh, it must have. So this was like 6 months ago when he was looking for it. Last year when we went to London, I tried to get an appointment, and it was literally 18 months out for Denver. They were like,
wow,
in a couple years. And so we had gotten clear, but it's like useless. And then when we did come back from London, our friend had the international one, and he had stayed with us for other stuff. But then when we got to customs, he was like, bye. And like,
I was gonna be like, bye.
I'll see you at the bar on the other side. And so it is genius if you can get it.
No, if you can get it, because it makes traveling with food so much easier, such less of a hassle. Obviously that's the most optimal thing. And especially, again, this is the lifestyle series. So I always like to work with my clients in terms of what's most optimal, what's still a really good option, what's maybe still a good option, and then there's the, hey, at least we tried level. So like for me, I always tell people, like, especially the ones that come to me, and as coaches, we hear this all the time. Coach, I'm willing to do anything. Okay, well, anything might mean that you've got to prep your own food and you've got to travel with it. And you've got to bring a food scale and just be hyper prepared and just be on top of your stuff. If that's the cost of admission to accomplish your goals, ultimately you're the one that determines if there's value in that level of work or not. And if you say, yeah, I'm willing to prep my food like I normally would, and then just show up to the airport and like I just looked up that Hot Logic on Amazon. I'm gonna buy one for me. And I'm like, this would have been so nice whenever I was a mobile personal trainer back in 2008. Like
you can plug it in your car too. If you have a jack
for 40 bucks, it's a 12-volt adapter or a plug into an outlet. Like, okay, super easy. I don't know if people know this or not, but there are outlets in airports. Like this will absolutely fit at one of the workstations. This is awesome. So like I'm adding this to my list of recommended items for my clients. So muchos gracias. But if that's what you have to do to accomplish your goals, it's going to keep everything dialed in. Like, like we were saying, you're not at the mercy of the person cooking at PF Chang's of how much oil did they use, right? You're not at the mercy of, hey, the Buffalo Wild Wings at the airport, how much butter did they put in that pan whenever they were making your burger? Like this keeps you 100% accountable and it keeps you dialed in. And ultimately, it's probably also best for, not probably, it's best for your digestion. You just keep foods in place because whenever someone travels, right? And I'm sure you're a little bit better adapted at this, but like you also, I'm sure, still run into the bed at this hotel sucks and, this pillow is terrible. Like, that traveling can throw off your sleep. Sleep gets thrown off, you're jet lagged. It's just a cocktail for poor recovery, poor sleep. Poor sleep leads to increased hunger. Like if you can at least keep the food portion stable and you're controlling that controllable, now whenever you have that variable of, man, there's a lump in the mattress or this pillow is as thin as a freaking crepe, like it makes it so that it's at least one thing that is normal compared to the usual routine.
I have a question. And that's typically like what I like to do with flight attending. So I've been a flight attendant for almost 12 years now. And we always joke that being a flight attendant is a lifestyle in its own. And then being a bodybuilder, it's a lifestyle in its own. And I've had to find this mesh that works really well to bring these two crazy lifestyles together. So I plan everything ahead. I like to feel good. So I try to keep everything consistent as much as I can, somewhat normal. So I stick to the same time frames of everything. We delayed this podcast an hour so I can make sure I got my sleep in because I have a late night tonight. But I try to work the same. I try to work out at the same time. I eat at my same times. I stay on my local time. So, I'm staying up till 3 a.m. on the East Coast, but it's bedtime at home. So I try to keep.
I was curious about. So that's something I was curious about with someone that travels as much as you with, do you keep the West Coast time or do you just try to adapt or does it just depend on how long are you going to be in a place for?
So luckily with my airline, we only fly either 3 hours behind for Seattle. We only fly 3 hours behind to like Hawaii or 3 hours ahead to the East Coast. So I'm only dealing with a 3-hour time change. I just stick to my Seattle or the Pacific Coast time and I just alter my schedule. But I like if I didn't have to train today, but I would wake up at my normal time here in Orlando and I would go to the gym at my normal time that I would at home. I eat my breakfast, I eat my lunch, and I eat my dinner and everything. I eat on meal times. They're the same times in prep versus off season. I have more food now, but I stick to the same time frame throughout my day of my training, my eating, my working, wherever I'm at, just to stay consistent.
Nice.
Yeah. And I think your goals matter for you. So you plan for it, right? Like if your goals, like you said, the marriage of like a bodybuilder, like your health and fitness goals and your job, you had to kind of marriage those two things together and find what works for you. So you plan for it. And I think what's also cool is you get to you think about the more positives to your travel and your schedule, right? Like I get to go to these cool gyms and like see the different places where I can train. And so you're looking at the positives and the areas of like personal growth for you instead of like, oh, I have to blah, blah, blah. Like I honestly never hear anything negative come from your mouth in terms of, I mean, obviously you love your job. You've been doing it for 12 years, but you spin it in a place of like personal growth and okay, but this is hard, but that means that I get to like work on a skill that I want to refine rather than something that's going to be holding you back.
And that's something that, so I had a client last year, it was about this time last year, she went into training to be a flight attendant. So she was, I think, gone because we had like a 6-week break or something. And she was like off at stuff, right? Like you're away for
training usually for airlines is 6 to 8 weeks. Yeah.
So she was off doing that. And then when she came back, I know her schedule was wonky because I think there's like a seniority, I forget what airline she was on, but there was like a seniority situation there where her flights tended to be like red eyes and things like that at first. But one of the big hurdles that we ran into was when they would finish a flight, like when they would land or if they had a layover or anything like that. And this works for anybody who travels for work. I feel like I hear all the time, like, well, things finished. And then afterwards, everybody was going out together. And so I didn't stick to anything because everyone, and like, they all wanted to go get drinks. They all wanted to go get dinner. And like, what am I supposed to do? And like, people say that all the time. And the one that kills me is like, if somebody will, check in and say, I'm going to be at this work event and I'm going to be with like my boss and a VP or something at dinner. And, so I can't be weird and order like boring foods and not drink because somebody will say something. And my response is always, if your boss has a problem with the fact that you don't want to get wasted at dinner with him because you're sticking to goals, you need to find a new job. Like, that's an issue. If you don't feel comfortable saying I'm not drinking tonight because you're out with your boss. And so it never comes down to the fact that the boss is actually going to be like, I'm going to fire you if you don't have this glass of red with me. It's the fact that people don't want to say, I don't want that when they're out in these situations. So they try to make it an excuse. They're like, well, everybody was going, so I have to be part of the team and drink tonight. And so, is that something that you run into with the crews that you fly with? Or like, how does that work with your crew when you're like, I'm going to the gym today and things like that?
Luckily, with the flights that I work now, I get in usually at midnight wherever I'm flying to. So we all usually just go to bed. And then we have a joke, or we have a nickname here at the airlines where you're a slam clicker if you just go to bed. And so I am a proud slam clicker. I get to my room, I slam the door and I click the lock. No, but it does happen. I just posted something on my story yesterday. We have lots of passengers that bring us treats and goodies. And I just saw it. What?
With the donuts, I saw it.
Yes. Oh my gosh, they brought us a whole box of donuts last night. And then the week before, we had a nice pilot that walked on with a box of donuts. But we get bags of candy all the time. And I just say thank you. And, I ask them where they're seated so we can, take extra care of them. But most of the time I work up front. I usually send the treats to the back. And then we just leave them in a cubby somewhere to be passed, if it's candy, to be passed to the next crew or the cleaning crew or whatever. But last night we get this box of donuts and my crew member goes, oh, well, there goes for staying on track today. And I go, why don't you just say no, thank you? Like,
Right.
and if it's so hard to say no, thank you, tell the passenger thank you and throw them away. Like, nobody is force feeding you to eat it. And I'm proud to be weird when being like, no, I'm going to eat my own food. I actually really like the food I prep. You have to find that inner self that you're okay with telling somebody no, thank you.
That is very powerful advice that I heard whenever I was young. No and no thank you are complete sentences. No one, I'm 34 years old. I have never seen anyone held down and force fed in my life.
No.
Like, it's okay to say no. It's okay to say no, thank you. It's okay to, like you said, be polite, say thank you, take it, walk to the back, put it in a cubby, or if it's an office situation, right? Carol from accounting brings in her homemade brownies. Oh, thank you. Grab one, put it in a napkin, go to your desk. Oh, I'm going to eat this at home. Put it in a Tupperware container, and just when you go home, give it to your spouse, give it to your kids. If there's a bro at your gym who's bulking, give it to him. Like, find a power lifter. We're always hungry,
Or like, we serve like ice cream in first class, and if there's extra, I will go find a kid on the plane or whatever and treat them. Like, I don't need, like, people, I feel like so many people are just afraid to disappoint somebody. But if you say it with, like, if you say no thank you with confidence and in security in yourself, people respect that. If you kind of like tread around like, oh, I don't know, it's like, it's more confident if you just say no thank you, or I have my own food, thank you so much. But just be okay with
somebody gives you a hard time, it's more of a reflection of them than you. Like, if somebody's giving you a hard time for not eating a donut, like, they're kind of a jerk. Right?
Yeah. Same with like drinking. Like, if they are uncomfortable having their own glass of wine while you don't have one, then that says something different about their relationship with alcohol than it does about you and yours. And something you don't have to worry about. And I think in that situation too, it comes off a lot differently, going to what Sam said about the confidence piece there. If you say like, I can't have that, I'm staying on track. That sounds a lot different than no thanks, I'm staying on track, so I'm choosing not to have that. Because I can't sounds like someone is saying like, don't do that, and like telling you not to have it, whereas saying like, I'm making this choice, or I'm already prepared for this, or something like that is much different and makes it more like you're taking the ownership over this situation as opposed to someone's taking it away from you.
Yeah, you're an adult, make your own choices. Like, and if you choose to have that donut, cool, but that's your choice. So then own it. Again, like, if you check in with your coach, you can't be angry that you didn't see progress that week because you chose to have the brownies and the donuts and the ice cream, or, you chose to not meal prep and rely on whatever you find in the airport for whatever reason, right? I think that ownership of your choices and realizing that you have the ability to make that choice can be actually very empowering, but can also be scary. So then choose it as an empowering tool. And I like the language part too that you said, Christina, about the not, oh, I can't have that, but it's the no, thank you.
Yeah, because it makes me also think of the Henry Ford quote. If somebody's like, oh, I can't stay on track. Well, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. So like, hey, Samantha's like, I'm traveling all the time. That's literally like, essentially, if somebody asked me to describe your profession poorly, I would describe it as professional traveler. But you literally travel all the time for work. And you say, I can stay on track, I can be consistent, I can do all these things. Like, you're that prime example of somebody that has at some point come to a coach and said, I'm willing to do anything to achieve my goals. And I mean, obviously, we're talking about elite of the elite level, IFBB pro. That is what it takes, though. And again, people that are like, well, I can't stay on track. Well, yeah, you're probably right. And if you can't stay on track working within the framework of fitting in a donut, then let's rework some things so that way you now found a solution maybe it's once a week that you're working in a donut that a passenger brings on, or that Carolyn Accounting brings in her brownies once a month, whatever it is. Find a solution to the perceived problem, and let's work that in. Like things, and there's always a plan B, right? At least there always should be. So like I'll tell my clients whenever they're traveling, look, if you can't be super on point, then at least bring some stuff that is really low hanging fruit essentially for staying on your macros. Like I trying to remember who it was I was talking to. Oh, it was my the guy who was doing my driveway. I was like, yeah, if you're not able to bring food with you, because this is a guy that's working all the time outside in Florida heat, like he's not able to necessarily always break away from the job that he's doing, pouring, laying out gravel, pouring asphalt, that kind of stuff. And he was like, man, I just can't get enough protein in. It's like, well, have you ever looked at chicken packets? You ever look at the chicken pouches? Like they're super macro friendly. Yeah, they're high in sodium, but I mean, for somebody that's literally sweating his ass off for 10, 12 hours a day, like you kind of need that sodium to come back in your system. So I told him that a couple of days ago, and he was like, man, this is so much better. I'm digesting it better than like going to Chipotle 3 or 4 times a week. I feel so much better doing something like this. And like same thing, when you're traveling, that's an easy option to have as like an emergency. Because let's say that your Hot Logic, suddenly the cord is frayed and you got to wait to get a replacement. Like, cool. If you've got a backup option as well, there you go. There's your protein source. Look around at the airport, the different shops. Like, I mean, I've been in some really small airports before, like even even Cat Island, Bahamas, at the little formerly a 1,200 square foot house airport. Even they had like, hey, here's some fruit to buy for bringing on the plane. Like, you can look around and find healthy options. You can look around and find things that you can reasonably track. And if nothing else, just good habits can carry you a long freaking way. Like, it's a good habit to just get a salad with grilled chicken, put dressing on the side. Find me a restaurant that you can't do that at, is what I always challenge people with. It's always doable if you choose to look for it.
So I have a question for you, Sam. Because we're talking about food, like what are some meals that you find are really easy to travel with? Because you prep all your food. So like what have you found like keeps relatively well, or again, is just easy to travel with?
So I meal prep for the whole work week. So on Sundays, I prep for Monday through Friday. I do my check-ins with Steven on Fridays. So if he gives me any changes going into the weekend, I can then meal prep for the weekend. That also allows me, if my husband wants to go out to eat, or if we want to make burgers or something like that on like Sunday, that gives me, I still prep for the weekend, but I can give myself a little bit more wiggle room. So I meal prep, I am strict Monday through Friday. Everything is grab and go, ready in the fridge. And then I do meal prep for Saturday, Sunday, but I always talk with my husband or friends or whatever like that. Like, hey, do we want to barbecue or do we want to do this? And I meal prep that. But some of the meals that I do, I try to keep my work meals. I try not to really make them on the weekends. So then that way I look forward to them during the week. But I stick to really simple. My first prep, I definitely got decision fatigue. I tried to do too much. Now I keep stuff super simple. So I've been doing a lot of just like, I'll fill the crock pot full of chicken and I'll just make a huge batch of shredded chicken. And I'll add some salsa into it. And then for fats, I add a little avocado cup. I am lazy and I do the pre-made packets of rice. I spend the extra couple bucks to just not have to make rice. And yeah, so I just cook everything in my Hot Logic on my work week, and it all reheats well. It stays fresh. And I think that's another thing is I use all fresh ingredients usually. Like I don't like reheated frozen like veggies. I feel like they get really mushy when you reheat them again. So I use all fresh veggies, and then yeah, my rice and chicken. Yeah, I usually stick to that. And like what we were talking about at the beginning, like you can bring any food through TSA unless it's soup. But you can even
unless
bring
it's a liquid.
But you can even bring soup. It just has to be frozen.
Right. I always tell my clients to have those like little peanut butter packets. I mean, unless you bring a full jar and it's frozen, which I know Rachel did. Like she bought a jar when we were traveling, and then she's like, I'm just gonna freeze it and like bring it home. So as long as it's frozen.
Peanut butter?
Yeah, she froze a jar.
What happens when you freeze peanut butter? Does it defrost?
There's some things that don't defrost well.
You like
I don't know. You'd have to ask her, because I was like, this is weird. I was like, okay, that's fine. I don't actually know, because no, she took it with her. But yeah, like you can have those like little packets. Yeah. I always take like oatmeal packets, the packages of rice. I have like the little packets of peanut butter. Sometimes, because I prepare things, I have the packets of like chicken. I usually end up not eating them because I just like to bring my own pre-cooked meat. And then what I actually do, because I know, Sam, you use like containers, but that's also probably because this is what you do for a living. Like you travel all the time. When I travel is
doing 2-day trips, I can bring all of my food for the 2 days. I can leave them in containers. But if I do a 3-day trip, or like when Pat and I travel for the longer weekends, I bring one Tupperware per meal. So, and then I bag everything up from there. And yeah,
baggies are like super easy, because it like you have a baggie, and then once you eat, you throw it out. So I'll like put things in baggies, but then I'll put the baggies of my meals into a container, so they're not all mushed. Yeah. And sometimes I'll freeze some of them. So the ones that I know that I'm not going to eat right away, I'll freeze, because then they digest. They unfreeze as I am traveling. So they stay relatively fresh, and they also double as a ice
pack.
Yeah, an ice pack.
So
which also have to be frozen if you travel.
It's funny. My son will only eat frozen peanut butter from like the Uncrustables. Like he doesn't let them thaw. He just straight up chomps them, and like he will not eat regular peanut butter sandwiches or peanut butter from a jar. It is just straight up frozen peanut butter.
It is good. Now that I think about it, that the frozen, like when it's like hard in the Uncrustable, is nice. But I still, the idea
I was curious yesterday, and
I've never had one of those, so I have no idea.
Me neither.
Just have one. Okay.
No,
just for enjoyment. Oh, if we ever buy them, it's almost Vic more often that'll eat them instead of the kids, because he just loves them, and like nostalgia.
Next time you got like 17 grams of fat to spare, 10 out of 10 recommend. But yeah, it's
like 400 calories.
Yeah, they're super high calories. But again, like things like that. And if somebody has the benefit of being in like a building season, and they're still like, obviously the more dedicated someone is at any stage, whether it's fat loss, building, maintenance, contest prep, the more dedicated you are and the more you bring your stuff, the more controlled and the better results you have. But the frozen foods like that, like Jess was saying, the double benefit is that it acts as an ice pack for you. So like I'll tell people, look, cook your chicken, cook your steak, freeze it, and now whenever you get to where you're going, boom, you're ready to go. Like I did a trip to my in-laws about a year and a half ago, and so like I'm big on sous vide. I would cook the entire week's worth of food sous vide if it was practical. But what I did was I took all my protein sources, put them in the immersion cooker, cooked everything sous vide, a little undercooked from where I wanted it. That way it's cooked like 90% of the way, freeze it, put it as the bottom and top liner in my food bag, brought the immersion cooker with me because it's like that big for the benefit of those watching on YouTube. It fits in nicely. You literally just need a pot of water and boom, you're super set. Everything is easy.
Yeah, so I think what we're getting here is, oh, sorry. Go ahead.
We're probably about to say something similar where I talked to somebody today who was like, I just want fat loss to happen and I want to eat like a normal person. And like in that conversation, it was not being super dialed in all the time, not tracking all the time, not preparing all the time. And while you don't necessarily have to do all of those together all the time, you do have to do some of it. And if you want things to happen, you can't just fly by the seat of your pants and just hope for the best. And when it comes to travel and airports, I mean, the thing that always makes me laugh is like when you see the pictures of people at the airport who like roll in, like there's no normal society rules about it where you can be like in pajamas and like people just kind of throw everything that's normal about life to like, oh, I'm in an airport, nothing matters. And so, you know, like we're drinking at 7 a.m. People are eating whatever they can get their hands on. They're in their jammies at the bar, like all this
decorum do not exist
like the Wild West.
Yeah. And so like, and it becomes this excuse to just say like, well, what was I supposed to do? And like, it's a commute, you know, and like, it's really not that different. If you can get from your house to your office building and you don't magically get pulled into every drive-through that happens to be on the road there because you happen to drive past it. If you can survive that and be on point, it doesn't have to be any different. And that effort has to go in. Like if you're wanting change, and I mean, I don't know about you guys, but like I talk to a ton of people who will say something like, I don't want to compete. I just want to look like I could. And I hear that like 3 or 4 times a week on calls, like all the time. And so they want to have that look and that shape and everything, but they don't want to have to do the preps. And what a lot of people don't understand is that just to walk around as that person who looks bomb on Instagram or that person at your gym who looks amazing, they're not dicking around. Like they're planning things out. They have routines in place. They're not going to restaurants, you know, that are always down the street, that are always going to be open and it's a chain and being like, well, it's Tuesday and I had to be here. So I guess I'm having what looks great, you know, like you can always order those other foods, like, or you can plan ahead. Like my family, just in my normal, like lifestyle life, they're used to the fact that sometimes we're going to go out and like, it's not worth it to me to order the grilled chicken entree at some of the restaurants because it's just gross. And so I'll be like, you guys enjoy whatever food it is that makes you happy. It's not going to make me sad that I'm not having it right now. I'll go home and stay on track. And I think it's just hard for a lot of people to separate that when they're like, but I'm on a trip and they want to have like the novelty, if it's a work thing, or I mean, if it's a vacation, we're having like a completely different discussion to a certain extent, depending on what you want to look and feel like when you get home from that trip. But like, it just becomes this thing where there's just no rules. And that's why we end up in all sorts of trouble. And you have to keep that consistency, and you 100% can. It comes down to your level of effort and how much you actually want this and how your body's going to respond to it.
Yeah. Your expectations have to reflect your actions, or your actions have to reflect your expectations. Whatever, it goes both ways. And depending on your phase can also depend on your level of detail. Like I know, Sam, you prep everything anyways, so it doesn't really matter. But like you said, on the weekends, you can have more flexibility and that type of thing, but you more than likely don't do that in a prep situation where you're like wanting to lose body fat. And the people who say like, oh, I want to lose body fat, but I want to eat like a normal human, I'm going, okay, well, one, what does eating like a normal human look like for you? Because if that means if that means eating like an asshole all the time, personally, that's not normal for me. And that's probably not healthy. So like, what does that look like for you? But two, if we're wanting to go into a more like a phase of life where we're wanting to elicit change, and like lose body fat, especially individuals who maybe don't have that much body fat to lose or are just looking to like level up in their health and fitness. That level of detail is required for that. So you have to adjust, right? I don't know.
Yeah, your goals have to be bigger than your excuses. And unfortunately, when I talk to a lot of people and a lot of crew members or people that have questions of why I do things the way I do, I hear a lot of excuses because I'm literally doing it and it's effortless. It definitely takes a lot of planning. Like, I have to look at my schedule, where I'm flying that week, what I'm doing that week, and see like, okay, I'm going to have to get training in on that layover. Is there a gym close by? What's the hotel gym like? Can I take a rest day that day? Like, and then depending on food, like if I'm traveling over the weekend and I know I'm not going to have access to plug in my Hot Logic or whatever like that, I might plan to do like a pasta salad for that meal because I can eat it cold. It definitely takes a lot of work to maintain and plan ahead, but it's a little chaotic on like Sundays getting everything planned out for the week. But then once I'm done with that, it's literally all my food is grab and go. Everything is already planned out. Everything is already prepped. So it's almost easy once you get into it. So,
and I have another question. Mm-hmm. So have you, and I feel like I already know the answer to this question, but have you ever neglected to check in with your coach or tell your coach when the protocols that you're doing aren't working for you, even though you try, like if you tried? Have you ever like experienced that?
No.
Yeah. And that's the other thing is like, you didn't fuck off, excuse my language, but like you probably communicated with your coach, hey, this isn't, I've tried and this maybe isn't working for me, or I'm struggling with this, or whatever it is. Also, I feel like you're the kind of person who just figures your shit out and gets it done, which again is something that you've worked at. And like you just said, it takes a lot of work and practice and patience with yourself and like just organization. And that I think makes like, that gives you character, like that gives you grit, and gives you confidence in saying no in certain situations and things like that. But I also feel like as coaches, we're here to help support your goals, right? We want you to succeed. We want you to win. And winning doesn't mean a trophy. Like, winning means ending the week feeling successful, navigating your travel, or getting in your protein when you felt like you couldn't, or finding those gyms and having good workouts when you're traveling. Like, we want you to win. So I asked that question kind of like leading us down the path of, even though you're traveling and you have a busy schedule, you don't neglect your check-ins with your coach. And I'm pretty sure you don't neglect communicating with your coach when things aren't working or you're having trouble.
Yeah, no, I check in on Fridays with Steven, and I typically have Fridays off so I can make sure that I can check in. If for some reason, if I'm flying a trip Thursday, Friday, I like to keep consistent with my check-in photos and stuff like that. So I'll take my check-in photos on Thursday morning, have them ready to go, still wake up, take my weight, do all that, and still check in on Friday morning with Steven. Also, when Steven and I first started working together, he knew I was already a flight attendant. So he knew with my travel schedule that I was going to need to be getting in my workouts on the road. So we use minimal machines. With like lower days, I do use machines. So I typically try to keep my lower days on like Mondays and Wednesdays or Thursdays, however it falls in the week. So that way, those are the days I'm at home and I can use my home gym. But then on like my upper days, we stick to pretty much just some barbell, dumbbell, and cable. So I can literally find, I mean, this hotel here in Orlando is actually nice. I could get a whole upper day workout in. Nice. But if I need to, I can sub out barbell movements for dumbbells. A hotel is always going to have cardio and dumbbells. That's the like minimum of a hotel. Mm-hmm. So if I do need to find an actual gym, I can find a Planet Fitness. Like I can sub, you know, my barbell movements for a Smith machine movement. Like there's no excuse. And it's also fun for me because I don't go out and shop or go out and eat and drink on my layovers. Going and finding these gyms, it actually gets me out of the hotel. It gives me an excuse to go walk around and kind of explore. What I've been doing lately is getting on like the Uber scooters and getting even further out from the hotel. So that honestly, there's no excuse. You can make anything work, I have made it work even in the crappiest of hotel gyms.
I had somebody this week say that like a lot of the stuff we've talked about, that it was just tedious. And I was like, but isn't it more tedious? Cause like when we're on track with it, she'll see results with stuff. And I'm like, but isn't it more tedious to check in and be mad that nothing changed and be frustrated with yourself? Like, wouldn't that be a far more frustrating way to just hit your head against the wall than to pack your food for work, like, or to find a gym or something like that? Like I can see where people can say like, oh, well, all of that prep, you know, takes so long. I can't give all like this one check of time. But then, like you said, it makes every other day for you something that's so streamlined and you can just grab it. You don't have to think about things and you can just roll with it. And it makes life so much easier. And I think that's where people get hung up on the first hurdle that they have to jump over is like, well, that's annoying. And then they're not looking forward at how it's going to make a lot of life a lot easier. And, you know, then we can have that wiggle room to let your hair down a little bit more when you need to, like when you had your trip with your husband and you were going out and, you know, having things that you don't normally have. It makes those kinds of situations where they don't have to be stressful. You're in a good routine, you know what works for you, and you know you're just going to go right back to normal. And it doesn't have to be like, I mean, for you, it's more than half your week that's on the go. And so if you were letting that falter, quite frankly, like your goals would be fucked. Like if you were only on track 3 out of 7 days, we'd be in trouble. And you know, a lot of people do fall into that trap where it's like, well, it's not perfect on those 4 days, so I'm not going to put any effort into it. And a lot of these things are like something that you can start with like one of them. If you're going to go do something, you don't maybe have to go find the gym every time you go somewhere, but I'll tell people go for a walk. Like that's always my stuff when people travel is put effort into your protein, make sure you're still getting produce each day, drink your water, and just move. It doesn't have to be like a workout. It can just be like, go for a walk to dinner, walk to go get cocktails, like whatever it is, get some of that movement in to try and keep something that's normal about your routine. So your body knows what to expect with stuff. And then that way you don't feel like you're in that fuck it mode of, you know, we've lit everything about normal life on fire and we're just flying by the seat of our pants.
Yeah, because I'll even say if it's just like a short trip where it's just like, hey, it's a one-time thing, you're away for like 2 or 3 days. It's just a one-time thing. Like your workout's probably the thing to kind of sacrifice, like plan ahead, plan your week out, get your workouts done before you go. But if you're willing to do something because you like being physically active, like I do 5 to 10 minutes of just like restorative yoga to start your day or end your day. Fantastic. Now, if you start recognizing pattern of like, man, this job, suddenly I've gotten more responsibilities and I am traveling and I am flying out and I'm gone for 1 or 2 days a week. Like, okay, you might want to talk to your coach about, hey, we might need to plan my workouts around this new travel schedule. You might need to communicate that. You might need to have a fallback plan of, okay, if I'm staying in a hotel gym and the gym's closed, the nearest gym nearby to the hotel that I'm at is, a 20-minute Uber away. Body weight can get you a long way. Bringing some resistance bands can actually be fairly effective. Like, these are all things that a lot of people will typically look down on, but I'd rather do 100 push-ups in a day than do none. I'd rather do 100 squats in a day than do none. I'd rather do 200 body weight hip thrusts than none. Like, if you want it that bad, you'll find a way. You don't look at, every opportunity as an excuse to get off at the next exit. You go, no, I've still got gas in my tank. I'm going to keep going. I don't need to pull off here. So, like, again, you're just somebody that's a prime example of, you either figure it out, you either get it done, you either communicate to your coach for your coach to be the one to say, let me take away that decision fatigue. Let me come up with a game plan. Here you go. Execute the play.
Yeah. 100%. Well, anybody have anything they want to add before we close it out today?
I mean, no? The one thing that I'll just ask, since Samantha's our guest, do you want a random useless fact, or would you prefer a dad joke?
I like the facts. You did the one the other day about the Darth Maul earring. I had to Google it.
Yeah, Ray Park is the freaking man. So here is today's random useless fact. Before 2011, beer and any other alcoholic beverage with under a 10% ABV in Russia was classified as a soft drink, not alcohol.
Wow.
What? That's like all of our beers.
I'm like, that's like a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
It's Russia. That doesn't surprise me.
Right, they're like, if it's not at least like 120 proof, give it to the kids.
Yeah, it's not straight vodka. It's fine.
Yeah.
So that was before 2011, you said?
Yep. 2011 was whenever they changed it.
Wow.
Is it like anything below 5 now? I want to know what their regulations are now.
You're like, okay, 8% and below.
Okay, 9.5. We'll concede.
I want like fountain soda like situations of beers, like just taps where you can go and get your soft drink of a 9% IPA.
Oh my God, speaking my language.
Oh man, that is hilarious.
That's fascinating.
It's a good one. All right, guys. Well, today was fun. I'm so glad I got to sit and chat with you today, Sam. I haven't gotten to meet you in person. You've met Jess in person, right? And Phil too.
Yeah.
I've hung out with Jess a couple times, and I get to see Jess in Dallas soon, right?
Like what, 3 weeks? 2 weeks?
Yeah. Something like that.
Yeah, I'm the weird homebody just trapped in Denver, so I need everyone to come this way. So.
And I've met Phil briefly in Tampa at the Command the Stage. Yeah. But you guys were busy. So, but no, I haven't met you in person yet, Christina.
No, I'm always hiding away. So I'm glad we finally got to actually chat instead of just on Instagram. So, all right, everyone. Well, thank you so much. And we'll chat more soon next time.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.